I realise I'm not in my bedroom as I normally would be. I am in fact at Rivendell and in the Rivendell Shrine Room. For those of you who don't know Rivendell, it's a retreat centre down in East Sussex. It's very beautiful and I feel very fortunate to be here. And it's a really professional setup. So, you know, I've got lighting and all sorts. So, and the other thing that we have here at Rivendell is this beautiful Padmasambhava figure, which I'll talk a little bit about a bit later on. But yes, I feel very fortunate to be sat next to him at this point in time. Yes, and thank you very much to Teja Siddhi and Moksha Gosha for helping me set this all up today. So this evening is an evening about Padmasambhava. He may be a familiar figure to some of you, he may be a completely unfamiliar figure to some of you. He was a historical figure. So he was a man who lived in 8th century India and latterly Tibet. And he was known as an accomplished yogi, a meditation master, an enlightened being. That is pretty much all we know factually about Padmasambhava. It's not a lot. However, he has this incredible wealth of myth and story that surrounds him. And some of that story we'll be exploring this evening. And I just wanted to say a little bit about story, really. Story and myth and symbol. It can speak to us in very different ways. I think we all have an intellectual, rational side, well, I certainly do, that needs concepts, needs ideas, it needs things it can understand and put into some kind of order and make sense of in a particular way. And then there's a whole other part, an unconscious part maybe, the emotional part, the kind of, at times less clear, certainly, part of us. And I tend to, I don't know how accurate it is, but I tend to think of kind of intellectual and rational as up here, and then emotional unconscious is down here somewhere. And it can be a bit murky, maybe it's even a bit dark, I don't entirely know what's going on. And both of those parts of us need to be engaged for us to really be able to put all of our energies behind whatever we want to do, and in this case, our spiritual lives. And Bhante Sangharachta, the man who founded our movement, he's really clear about this. We need both. We need things that appeal to our rational minds and things that appeal more to our unconscious. And that can be where story and myth and symbol come in. So I'm going to really invite you this evening to just be curious and notice your experience when you're perhaps listening to the story or sort of thinking about the figure of Padmasambhava. Even if you're very familiar with the figure of Padmasambhava, you might still want to just come at it afresh and see what possibly resonates with you, what might speak to you. Just noticing what's happening. And it may be that nothing's particularly resonating, nothing's particularly speaking to you, and that's completely fine. These things work in mysterious ways, and what doesn't sort of speak to you at some point, there'll be something else that does at another. So I'm sat next to, I was hoping he was going to be a bit closer to the camera. I'm not sure how clearly you can see him, but this is a figure of Padmasambhava. And just we call it a rupa, so a visual, sort of physical form. And he's full of symbol. That I'm not even going to go into this evening. That's a whole other evening to talk about. But just very sort of briefly to give you an idea, and if you can get up closer to your screen to have a look, do. He's seated in royal ease. In his right hand, he's holding the skull cup of Shunyata. in his the crook of his right arm, he has a flaming 3-pronged trident, which has 3 severed heads on it and a double vajra and streamers and silks. In his left hand, he's holding a vajra, a golden vajra, truth itself. On his head is a red lotus cap, atop of which is the yogi's vulture's feather. And his facial expression is a famous expression. It is both wrathful and smiling, both at the same time. I'm going to mention that a little bit later, probably. So that's the figure of Padmasambhava. And the other thing I really want to encourage this evening, so I'm sort of talking about being open and being curious and being interested. The other thing I really want to encourage is kindness, kindness to ourselves. Padmasambhava was born from Amitabha, and Amitabha is the red Buddha of love and compassion. He's the warm red glow of the setting sun. And he is absolute compassion. So I really invite you to bring that warmth into your metta practice this evening. So what I'm going to do is I will lead us through the metta bhavana. So for any of you who aren't that familiar with the practice, don't worry if you haven't remembered the stages. I'll be reminding us as we go along. For any of you who are very familiar with the practice, feel free to tune me out if you want to do your own thing. And I'm just going to begin the meditation with the chant of Padmasambhava. Now, chanting or mantra is said to be the sound form, the audible form of the figure that you're chanting about. So as this is a physical rupa form, kind of what you can see, a mantra is what you can hear, and it represents the particular figure. And I invite you to join in with the mantra if you would like to. Or if you want to just listen, that's fine. I won't chant for very long, but just to give us a sense and to really invite Padmasambhava into our evening. And again, just notice what your experience is with that. If you're chanting, and I do encourage you to chant if you feel like you'd like to, just notice what resonances, what experiences are happening in your body. What do the vibrations feel like? Or if you're just listening, then just listening and hearing the sound of the mantra. So I'll do that, and then we will meditate, and we'll do 5 stages of metta bhavana. And then right at the end, I'll just very gently chant the Padmasambhava mantra again before we bring the meditation to a close. And then it will be time for tea. So I invite you now to make yourself comfortable. Make yourself comfortable in however you like to sit for your meditation. Actually, one thing I haven't checked out, Jeremy, perhaps you can tell me if the bell, you can hear the bell all right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Great. Good stuff.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so just settling in. Settling in to whatever posture you feel comfortable with to meditate. That might be sitting, it might be lying down, you might be on the floor, you might be on a chair. Just take a moment to come into an experience of your body right now. You might want to notice the temperature around you, the temperature of your cheeks, and your feet, your hands. And then just bring your awareness down to your feet, noticing wherever they're contacting, whatever they're resting on, whatever's supporting you. That might be the soles of your feet, it might be the tops, or the sides, or your heels. Just feeling into that sensation. And bring your awareness up through your legs, your knees, your thighs, and into your bottom, your buttocks, sitting bones, whatever they're contacting, the seat or the bed, the cushion. And maybe just take a bit of a deeper breath in as you breathe out. Really let your weight relax into that support. Just letting go into the supporting earth beneath us. Even if you're several floors up in a building, the foundations will be going down deep into the earth, holding all of our experience. And feeling our way up through our spine, whole of our back, shoulders, arms and elbows, and our hands resting. Up the back of our neck, all the way across our scalp, softening down through our face, jaw, throat. And coming down into our belly, perhaps noticing the rise and fall as we breathe. Bringing our attention to our breath as it's coming in and out of our body. And tuning into our heart center. Wherever we experience that, and we might not even know where we experience that, that doesn't really matter. Just tuning into our heart. Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om. 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 Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava. The metta bhavana. In the first stage, we bring ourselves to our heart center. And we wish ourselves well. We wish ourselves happy. You might want to imagine yourself in full possession of whatever you value most. And it doesn't matter if you don't know what it is that you value most. It might be really obvious, but it might not. That doesn't matter. Just bringing ourselves to mind how it feels to be in full possession of what we value most. And if you find your mind is wandering, just gently noticing that and congratulating yourself for noticing that. Come back to the weight of your bottom on your seat. The breath coming in and out of your body. And the intention of wishing yourself well. Wishing yourself to have what you most value. Imagining what that's like. And in the second stage, bring to mind a friend. We might want to bring them into our hearts. May they be well. May they be happy. May they have what they most value. We don't need to know exactly what that is. May they be truly fulfilled. And the third stage, bringing into our minds, into our hearts, somebody we don't know very well. We know of their existence. We know that at this moment they'll be going about their lives, but we don't really know very much about them. And they will have things that they value, that they treasure. You might want to imagine them truly fulfilled with whatever it is they value. May they be well, may they be happy. May they have their heart's wish. And just noticing whatever our experience is right now in our bodies. And in the fourth stage, bringing to mind someone we're finding difficult at the moment. We might want to bring them into our hearts. We might want to keep them at more of a distance. Either is completely fine. Just noticing how it feels to wish them well, to wish them happy. They will have something that they truly value, something precious to them. maybe we want to fill them with the warm red glow of the setting sun, sending them that soft red, warm, compassionate light. May they be well. May they be happy. May they be truly fulfilled. And just noticing whatever our experience is, there's no right or wrong way to feel. Being kind to ourselves. Grounding ourselves if we need to, feeling our weight on our seat. And gently wishing the person we're finding difficult all happiness, all fulfillment. Staying with that wish as best we can. Giving ourselves much kindness when we notice we're distracted. And the final stage, bringing all four of us together, ourselves, our friend, the person we don't know so well, and the person we're finding difficult. And wishing each of us equally well and happy. We might want to use the warm red light of the setting sun to bathe each one of us equally in warmth and compassion and well-being. And then gently spreading out to include more people, everyone that we're meditating with in our virtual Zoom room. To the other people who we might be in houses with. Other beings that we might be in houses with. And then gently just extending the well-wishing warmth to include more and more people. There's no limit to how far you can go. Maybe the whole world, maybe out into the universe. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be truly fulfilled. Om Ahom Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om. 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 Just for the last couple of minutes, dropping any effort that we've been making, just sitting, just noticing whatever our experience is. So we will have a 10-minute tea break now, and then we will come back after the tea break. I do encourage you, take your meditation, maybe be as quiet as you can in the tea break. Obviously, sometimes that's not possible, but just, yeah, perhaps keeping that stillness. And we'll keep that on in our Zoom room here as well, if you keep yourselves on mute just during our tea break time. We'll have groups after the little talk that I'll give after the tea break. I really do stay for the groups if you're able to. They can be really enriching, actually. But for whatever reason, you may not be able to attend a group. And if you could just go down to participants and press the red button, Jeremy will know not to put you into a group. Lovely. See you all in 10 minutes. Have a settling back in. I'm just trying to work out how to get rid of this. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So it's very lovely to see all of you here on Sangha Night. This special time between Christmas and New Year is always a bit of a, I don't know, bit of an in-betweeny, bit of a magical time, I think. So I think that's a good time to be talking about Padmasambhava and listening to a story. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. Sit comfortably, sit back. Get your cuppa. Nice leg kick, Amrachandra. Don't think I didn't see that. So the story I'll be telling this evening is from, I put these books on the shrine. They're from these 2 volumes, The Life and Liberation of Padmasambhava. These are beautiful books, I have to say, and I'd want to say a very big thank you to Mandarava, who lives and works here at Rivendell. Well, actually, she doesn't live here anymore, but she's very much part of the fabric of Rivendell, and she's lent me her precious volumes of The Life and Liberation of Padmasambhava, so I can tell the story this evening. Yeah, so a long time ago, in a land far away, there lived a king, King Indrabhuti, and he was the king of Udayana, which is an area in the northwest of India. But he was not happy. All was not well in the lands of Udayana, and there are a few reasons for this. Indrabhuti himself was blind. He had a wife. She was called the Shining Queen. And they had had a child, but the child had died, and now they had no son, which they were very sad about. And also more generally in the kingdom of Udayana, things weren't going well. There was some blights, crops were failing. It wasn't a happy land. And legend has it that Avalokiteshvara, the great bodhisattva of compassion, looked down upon this scene, and he was so moved that he begged Amitabha, the Buddha of love and compassion, the red Buddha, to help. And it is said that Amitabha responded immediately. Instantly, a ray of red light came from Amitabha's tongue and went all the way down to the immaculate, clear lake of Dharmakosha, which is in Udayana. And upon that lake, there appeared a red lotus, a huge, beautiful red lotus. And in that red lotus, in the center, was an 8-year-old boy child. He was beautiful. It is said that his skin was the color of the inside of seashells. And he was Padmasambhava. Padma means lotus, Sambhava means born of. So there he sat on this lake. And it happened that one of King Indrabhuti's ministers, it may have been a minister of the interior or of the exterior. There are a lot of different ministers in the Life of Liberation of Padmasambhava. Came along, was walking by the beautiful lake and saw this lotus and this extraordinary child sitting in this lotus. And obviously, you know, it's not a sight you see every day. He thought, I'm going to go and tell the king about this. So he goes back to the king and says, I really think you need to come and meet this being that's just appeared. So Indrabhuti goes with him to the side of the lake. Of course, Indrabhuti can't see this miraculous vision because he's blind. So he talks to Padmasambhava. And Padmasambhava, you know, clearly he's not your average 8-year-old child, responds with some extraordinary words of truth. And the effect on Indrabhuti is that he instantly sees, his eyesight is restored. And he's overjoyed that his eyesight is restored, and he's overjoyed to find this child, this extraordinary child. And he takes Padmasambhava back with him to the palace, to the Shining Queen, and they're delighted to have a son, this miraculous son who's appeared. And so time passes, and Padmasambhava grows up. Generally, things in the land are much better. The crops are yielding again. Things are feeling more in order, I suppose. However, things aren't all rosy in the palace. Often Padmasambhava cannot be found. And when he is found, he's sort of sat meditating under a tree somewhere. And it becomes clear, the ministers kind of point out to the king, he's just not content, he's not happy. What can we do to try and, you know, make him feel engaged in palace life? And they come up with these various schemes, none of which work. And eventually it comes to a head, and Padmasambhava says to his father, to King Indrabhuti, I've just got to go. I can't live here anymore. I need to follow a different kind of life. I need to follow the spiritual life. And of course, Indrabhuti is distraught. He's so upset, and he desperately wants Padmasambhava to stay in the kingdom and rule after him. And there's a beautiful exchange between the two of them in the Life and Liberation. I'm just going to read you a little bit of what Padmasambhava says to the king. So this is Padmasambhava speaking to the king. The holy men of former times have explained the Dharma, and I, adhering to contingent truths, to cure the heart of my excellent father, the king, must utter these stanzas. Listen. What was united for lack of being stable is sundered. The momentary condition is breaking up. Kings and great men are dispersed like crowds in the marketplace. In all the worlds, there is no law of permanence. All die, thus losing the body which was theirs. The five aggregates assembled are broken up. Human life advances without ever stopping. All acts are established without being fixed. What we value does not go with us into death. Relatives do not go with us into death. Riches accumulated do not go with us into death. Neither beauty nor jewels go with us into death. Since we must wander alone in an unknown land, consider respectfully if all this is real. As for me, having sought the Dharma of the great vehicle, soon, O father and mother, I will reveal a supreme Buddha. Meditate on this auspicious word and give comfort to your hearts. I find that speech so moving, and it really sums up Padmasambhava a bit for me. I talked about him having a wrathful expression and a smiling expression, and I think they're both there in that speech. The wrathful, like, look, this is how it is, and then the smile of the compassion, to cure the heart of my excellent father, the king. I must say these words, meditate on this auspicious word and give comfort to your hearts. So he's saying, I know it's painful, but I've got to go. I've got to go and become enlightened, basically, is what he's saying. And so the king very reluctantly agrees to let him go. And actually what happens is that he ends up getting himself exiled from Udayana. That's another story for a different night. There are many, many stories within these volumes, which I don't have time to go into, but he gets himself exiled and he goes to cremation grounds. He goes and spends, I've done some rough sums, about 40 years in 8 different great cremation grounds. And these cremation grounds are quite extraordinary places of, death. There's bodies all over the place in various states of decomposition. They're dark, fearful places full of energies and demons and who knows what. They're scary places. Padmasambhava kind of revels in these places. He is able to really meet these energies, these sort of dark energies coming up. And what he does is he sits and he teaches the Dharma, and he receives teachings in this cremation grounds. And at the end of his time, throughout these eight different places, he is an enlightened being. He has a full understanding of the truth. And he becomes renowned as a tamer of demons, as somebody who can really communicate with and transform energies. Meanwhile, in Tibet, King Trizin Jetson has decided that he would very much like to bring Buddhism to Tibet. I guess he's heard he's heard something of it, it's resonated with him, and he's wanting to bring Buddhism to Tibet. He's made a start. He's brought in an abbot called Shantarakshita, and he's a very well-known scholar. So he is very learned, is a well-known scholar. And he's making a start in trying to bring Buddhism to Tibet. He's having some trouble. They're trying to do various things, one of which is build a monastery, and they'll build it by day, and then by night it will get taken down by the energies and the spirits within the land of Tibet. And Shantarakshita realizes there's only one man for this job, and that's Padmasambhava. He needs to be called. And so he tells King Trizin Jetson this, and the king extends an invitation to Padmasambhava. He asks him to come to Tibet, to bring Buddhism to Tibet. And Padmasambhava responds, yes, I'm going to come. And so he sets off. And it's interesting because he really takes his time in going to Tibet. And in fact, he spends quite a lot of time on the edges of Tibet. Again, he's really getting to know and talking to the energies, the spirits, the forces that live within Tibet. He wants to get to know them and ultimately transform them. There's a beautiful passages in this book where he comes across various demons and yakshas and rakshikas and whatever, and they all give him the heart of their lives after conversing with him. You get the impression that the king is a little bit impatient. He keeps sending out various sort of emissaries to try and get Padmasambhava to kind of hurry up. But Padmasambhava, of course, Padmasambhava just takes his time. He's not going to be rushed into anything. And just before the king himself meets Padmasambhava, he sends out an army of 500 ironclad horsemen, which is quite a statement when you think about it. You can imagine just this sort of massive troop of ironclad horsemen turning up to say hello. And then the king arrives. And finally, the king and Padmasambhava meet. But the king is not on his own. I'll take a dramatic pause for a cup of tea. The king is surrounded by a huge entourage of his entire court. So he's got both his wives there, and they've got all of their ladies in waiting in all of their finery. He's got all of his courtiers, all of his ministers, ministers of the interior, ministers of the exterior. There are tents, beautifully coloured silk tents that have been put up. And there are lots of dances. There's dances with songs, dances with masks, dances with drums, and harmonious dances. There's a lot going on in this sort of big display, in a way, of kingly power, kingly wealth, It's all there, it's all going on. So you've got all of this with King Tristan Jetson, and then on the other side, you've got Padmasambhava. He's alone. There's no mention of him having any traveling companions as far as I can see. So it's just one man. And I imagine he's looking quite wild. So he spent 40 odd years in cremation grounds. I imagine him to be cutting quite a wild figure. He's been traveling for quite a long time. And you often hear people comparing the figure of Padmasambhava to Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean films. And I think for me, that I can see why people do that. He's got this sort of wildness about him and this sort of kind of unpredictability as well. Don't quite know what's going to happen next. And so here they are, these two men, excuse me, facing each other. And it just feels like, so they're both facing each other, and they're both trying to measure up the situation and decide whether or not they're going to bow to each other. And you can imagine there's a bit of an awkward pause here where they're both working out what to do. And I'm just going to read their thoughts, which we're told. So Padma, the great one from Udayana, reflected. But who are we, he and I? Plunged in darkness is his mind. I am learned in the 5 realms of knowledge. Buddha in a single lifetime, exempt from birth and death. It is out of necessity that he invites me here. Formerly this king bowed down before me. Shall I or shall I not return his bow? If yes, the majesty of the doctrine will be slighted. If no, since he is the king, he will be angered. Yet, however great he be, bow down I cannot. And King Tristan Jetson thought to himself, I am sovereign over all the blackheads of Tibet. The Bodhisattva abbot has already made obeisance to me. The Guru must prostrate himself as well. So loath to extend the first greeting, he stood there hesitant. So you can imagine this scene. I'm thinking it's really quiet at this point. I think the dances and the songs have all stopped. Everyone is turned towards this kind of scene. It's a bit of a Mexican standoff between these two men. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? And what happens is Padmasambhava gives a pretty awesome speech. It's a very long speech. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's 29 verses all in all. But he absolutely, categorically says who he is. So these are just a few of the verses. I am Padmasambhava, the holy doctrine. Mine are the counsellings for assured ascension in the Dharma. Externally, I am a saffron-robed bhikshu, within, yogi of the supreme secret mantras. I am Padmasambhava, the doctor. Mine is the nectar of the doctrine, the counsels that cure one of death. And apart from their apparition, I raise up images identical with the gods. I am Padmasambhava, the queen. Mine are the counsellings of the Buddha at the hour of death. I protect the undertakings of those who have great faith. I make happy the subsequent life of man. I am Padmasambhava, the ageless. Mine are the counsellings of the Dharma that assuages the suffering of those whose vitality yields to sickness, whose splendid appearance has been struck down by circumstance. I am Padmasambhava, who knows no sickness. The counsellings of the great perfection of the Dharma are mine. And you, king of barbarian Tibet, king of the country without virtue. Uncouth men and ogres surround you. You are king, your lungs swell. Great is your power, your liver is well satisfied. Scepter in hand and haughty, you stand high. But I, sire, will not bow down before you. And yet, in accordance with my conjoined vows, having come to the heart of Tibet, here I stay. Great king, witness, have I come? He spoke, turned his hands, and springing up from his finger, a miraculous flame seared the king's garments. King, ministers, courtiers could not withstand him. Bowing in unison, they prostrated themselves as though swept by a scythe. So again, that's quite a scene. The whole of King Trezin Jetsun's court. When they hear this great clarion call of truth, all they can do is prostrate themselves. They're not even slightly bowing, they're flat on their bellies on the ground in the face of truth. And then just to conclude that bit of the story, Padmasambhava then goes on to bring Buddhism to Tibet. He spends quite some time bringing the teachings, getting them translated, taming demons in order to build the monastery. And then at the end of these volumes, he is seen flying off on a winged horse with a rainbow behind him, off to the land of the Rakshikas, the ogres, to go and bring them the truth. So that is a very abbreviated, sort of particularly selective story of Padmasambhava. And I just want to spend a little bit of time just talking about one thing in particular that really strikes me from that story. There may have been various things that caught your attention or interest, there may not. But just for now, I do encourage you to follow them up if there were. But just for now, I'm going to focus on the question of what do we bow down to? What do we hold most highly? And what do we value the most? So we've got this extraordinary scene of King Trezin Jetsun. He's surrounded by his court, his army, his wives. He's the pinnacle, if you like, of worldly power, of achievement, of what we might aspire to. And when faced with the reality of the Dharma, of the truth as represented by Padmasambhava, they can only bow down. Padmasambhava cannot bow down. Like he couldn't stay in the palace life. He couldn't live that life. It held no meaning for him. And now he knows fully the truth. His focus and complete faith in the Dharma is absolute. The conventions of the world are of no interest to him. They have no power, and he refuses to bow down. And I imagine, I know I have, we all have our own versions of the king's entourage. The conventions, the routines, the comforts, the things that we've shored up sort of around us, giving an illusion perhaps of permanence, of substantiality and of satisfactoriness. And also I was thinking, for me in particular, distractions are a big thing for me in sort of avoiding looking really at the truth of reality. And I feel like the dances in this story, the dances with drums, the dances with songs, the dances with masks, even the harmonious dances, they're kind of distractions. And it's not that there's anything wrong with dances, like really appreciating something for its beauty. It's the attitude with which we do that. So I know that if I'm being distracted, I'm kind of grasping at things to take me away from my experience, which is very, very different from really appreciating the beauty of something. It's a completely different experience. So another way of describing these things, these sort of conventions, routines, comforts that we have built up in Buddhism is false refuges. So my desire, for example, of material possessions, to be seen in a certain way, to fulfill a certain role, and to be distracted from really being with my experience. All of those are false refuges. And I'm really struck, particularly in our current times, the COVID pandemic is really showing us something. We've got this tear in the fabric of all of our routines, all of our usual arrangements, how we think things are, how we think things will always be. To a certain extent, that's been pulled out from under us. The momentary condition really is breaking up, as Padmasambhava said when he was talking to King Indrabhuti. And of course, it always is. It's always like that. But at the moment, I feel we're even less able to pretend that it isn't. And in a way, I can see the COVID pandemic as the figure of Padmasambhava, and me in the crowd, in the sort of courtiers of the king, being shown the truth. Now, I'm not saying here that we should bow down to the COVID virus, but I do think we have to fully accept the truths of impermanence, insubstantiality, and unsatisfactoriness if we are to end our suffering and if we are to find freedom. And recently I spent about 6 months really unwell with the COVID virus. The rug was really well and truly pulled out from under me. All of my routines, my roles, the kind of things that I would do to distract myself just weren't available to me anymore. I was very limited in what I could do. And in amidst the fear and the raging against what was happening, I found true moments of meaning and of happiness, and dare I say it, contentment in the Dharma, either reading to it or listening to it or chanting. And actually in that time, it was all that made sense. It was all that held value for me or had meaning. That and the deep kindness of those around me. And I imagine we've all been challenged by the pandemic in various ways. Indeed, we've all been challenged by life in various ways. And I imagine we've all sought refuge in a variety of things, some worldly, some dharmic. And of course, we always got that choice. At any moment, I can choose to spend my time, my energy, my money on shoring up my sense of security, acquiring things, distracting myself. And of course, my favorite, railing against the fact that things aren't as I would like them to be. Or I can choose to turn to the truth, to bow down to the truth, to what is beautiful, to what is truly good, what has real value and meaning for me. And actually just spending time asking myself, what do I really want to bow down to? What does have true value and meaning for me? And of course, I oscillate between the two, a bit like the king, Trizin Jetson. I've got a strong sense of wanting to practice Buddhism. It resonates within me. The truth resonates. And at the same time, I'm very much in and of the world. Like the king, my mind is plunged in darkness. And from now on to enlightenment, I'm going to be moving between the worldly and the spiritual. And it's very much, you know, the working practice of my life. Just trying to turn more and more to the truth, to true refuges, to bow down to what I really, truly value. And I can see that transformation over time. I'm able to sit a bit more with my experience. And if I'm distressed or upset these days, I'm much more likely to turn to the Dharma than to any of my other false refuges. And that would include the advice and counsel of a good spiritual friend. And it's incredibly important to be kind to ourselves in this process, because it is a process of transformation, actually, and it requires immense kindness. And thinking about spiritual friend, for me, what is required, as well as huge amounts of kindness, is the presence of Padmasambhava. In a way, he is my ultimate spiritual friend. And the reason for this is as I hope has come out in some of what I've told and talked about this evening, his constant exhortation, his constant call not to get comfortable in routine, not to get comfortable in habit, in convention, in false refuges. He's utterly uncompromising. He's completely focused on the truth. And he wants that. He can see the possibility of absolute freedom from our suffering. He can see our potential for enlightenment. And he sees a cure and comfort for our hearts. And again, that's, for me, you've got this sort of kind of wrathful, I'm going like this because I'm thinking of his eyebrows, the wrathfulness of like, come on, wake up. See what things really are. See how things really are. He's so strong with that. And he's like that because his deepest wish is for a cure and a comfort for our hearts. And so what I think of when I think of Padmasambhava is, well, how much less can I bow down to convention? How radical can I be? How radical can we be? How much less can we bow to convention? How much more can we transform? I think I'm going to leave it there, actually. I've slightly run over time anyway, so I'll leave it there. We've got some questions in for your groups, but I'll just very quickly, when I say that, what does the act of bowing down mean to you? What, if anything, do you bow down to in your life? And what holds real meaning for you? Or, of course, there may be other things that have come up for you, anything that you feel relevant that you'd like to talk about in your groups. So thank you very much, and